The weekend is almost here, and that means we are gonna do a one edition only this year. It's never gonna be done, ever.
You heard it here first, folks.
Now, it's TLF, baby, Tier List Fridays, and we're looking at melees in Mythic Plus, because I think the dust has kind of settled a little bit, and we can have some better image for the melees in the dungeons. I mean, we're already talking about 22s and 23s cleared by some people. Obviously, some of them do not have their logs public. I wonder why.
It's so hard. They're probably, I don't know, prepping for MDIs. Maybe they have secret builds or strategies. I don't know. We couldn't find a single really high key log above 21s or maybe even 22s, but you know, that's the nature of the beast, and that's what it is.
Yeah, this is it, okay? But we are looking at a lot of like different websites. So obviously we have like warcraft logs we check on, we look at u.gg, we look at radar.io scores as well on different specs and see how they perform and what comes and so on. So there's a lot of like data to be piled in and make these rankings. Now, if you love this, you can always support us by checking our Patreon, patreon.com/MarcelianOnline. The link is in the description. You can get some awesome custom wallpapers with your character on over there, and also having access to the Patreon exclusive podcast while also laughing at us when we make bloopers. So
it's funny.
Yeah, it helps us a lot. It's not required. We are grateful for everybody, but if you are interested, check the link in the description. Okay? All right, let's go with Arms Warrior. Who are we looking at? What keys we're looking at here, baby?
Arms Warrior is currently doing 21s and like 20s. I don't know if they've broken into 22s. Maybe by the time we actually launch this, maybe they've done like 1 or 2 22 warriors, because it is fortified week. And although the week kind of started a couple of days ago and we do have some logs, it's likely that people haven't done their highest fortified possible. Maybe they're still waiting for that last tier piece and so on. So that's true for everybody. But Arms right now is still like giga strong in AoE. You have major burst potential with all the little tiny cooldowns. Thunderous Roar is nuts. Played it myself. It is so fun to do.
Yeah, it does kind of lack a little bit into the boss damage. So I think like when we look at the data, you know, obviously there's some like tyrannical logs caught up in over there, and they're not doing the greatest on tyrannical.
It was the first week of tyrannical.
Yes,
so
that is true. That is true. It's pretty early on to call it. However, based on what we've seen on the other specs, we have to put it in C tier. Now, mind you, we've seen all of these keys basically being done at least into the 19s and 20s, okay? So, huge disclaimer, all of the melee specs on this list can do their 20s and top the meters, okay? This is pure, based on pure data, not even us being biased towards something or anything like that.
I like Arms.
Okay.
I like it better than C tier.
All right. Now, let's talk about Assassination Rogue. This is one of the specs that is currently like mostly doing 19s and 20s, and it's by no surprise. We've said it a million times, even Whisper said it, the spec kind of needs a little bit of a rework or looking into, at least in the department of AoE, because it is struggling over there, especially when you have competition within your class with Sub and Outlaw. It just becomes a pain to play Assassination when you have those stepping up over there. It is shining on Tyrannical, so you're gonna see some really decent numbers on bosses, especially with the locks from Tyrannical, but AoE is still weak, and overall the DPS output
Puss! The DPS output is okay. It's obviously better than like what we all do 99% of the time from the top Assassination Rogue. So it's possible, but you're gonna work your butt off.
Yeah, it is. So we still have to place it into C tier, okay? So it's not a tragedy. Once again, there's a lot of Assassination Rogues who are doing 19s and 20s up until this point. Now, Outlaw, on the other hand, well, there's no surprise. Outlaw is doing amazing.
It's good.
What are the keys we've seen? Like,
I think
22 was the max?
I think so for Outlaw right now, because we're saving a specific spot for the 23 clears.
Yes.
But Outlaw is doing pretty well. It has really good. It's one of the, I think, 3 or 4 specs that we're going to cover today, pretty much all the time, that has really solid damage across the board. It's not like Assassination where like, oh, you're gig on bosses, but then you're like,
Yeah, Outlaw will do great in Tyrannical and Fortified, and the damage profile will still be there regardless of what are you hitting. And also, it's still a rogue, so on top of having like a lot of more pluses and I would say ease of access to AoE damage as opposed to Assassination, it still brings the rogue goodness, all right? So this time, Outlaw has to go into an A tier. It's not S tier because, well, we'll see why.
Yeah.
Survival Hunter, well, Do you remember when Survival Hunter used to be?
Yeah, so the Survival Hunter has undergone a couple of changes. Obviously, they've been buffing AoE, and the tier set is heavily more into AoE. And I guess that's great. It's obviously doing a little bit better than last season, or at least at the beginning of the last season. Right now, it's doing 20s. I think some of the top survival hunters are doing 22s also, but that's like 1 or 2 keys here and there.
There's a couple of logs, yeah.
And since we cannot see those logs, we don't know exactly how much they're doing in their respective parties in those 22s, but it's safe to assume that survival is definitely a little bit better. I think on certain logs, I'm pretty sure that Warcraft logs ranks it better than Beast Mastery, which has been a while since that was the case. And this is after the nerfs of the tier set. I'm not sure how many of these survival hunters also have their tier set from everything that we've seen, but it is doing a little bit better, and it does have all the hunter tools that you would like.
Yeah, okay, let's place it into B tier with the caveat that it's actually not bad, and we can possibly see the rise further in the season.
The actual overall numbers, so we don't usually judge the overall numbers, but the actual overall numbers are very close to what A tier specs are doing.
No, there you go. So we'll see this in almost a month from now, how it turns out for survival. Enhancement Shaman, on the other hand, now this is one of the stars of the patch. You can see Enhancement Shaman. I think the top boys right now are doing 23s. So
some of them. And even so, across the board, Enhancement is doing like 22s and maybe like a leftover 21 that hasn't been upgraded to a 22. So Enhancement in terms of like overall progression as a spec in this season is doing really well. Similar to Outlaw, it has like really good damage across the board. It doesn't feel like it has a specific weakness on Tyrannical or Fortified. Obviously brings a lot to the group, especially if you're playing like a melee heavy group. Wind Fury is obviously really good. You get the blast as well, specifically if you're playing with a healer that's not a Restoration Shaman. You're gonna get all the good stuff from Enhancement, and that's particularly good. And I'm pretty sure that not everybody has their 4-set, because Enhancement 4-set is cranking.
Yeah, it is bumping up. So on top of it having like 22s on average, okay, with a couple of 23s over there, the damage profile is also insane.
It was hard to think of.
Almost
yeah, we thought about putting into S tier, but it's not quite there, but it's definitely the best A tier spec so far.
All right. Let's talk about Feral Druids. Feral Druids who are like averaging somewhere on the 20s and 21s. I've seen a couple of logs on, the prominent Ferals, doing some 22s and stuff. Obviously, we all know that Feral will do absolutely great in AoE. Single target, a bit average, looking at some tyrannical logs, decent, but
you can probably you can kind of see like, okay, they're falling a little bit behind on bosses, so you can kind of imagine it that it's an ARMS version of the spec in terms of output performance. However, it is doing better numbers than ARMS.
AoE, yeah, so overall you can definitely see doing better performance wise. Plus again, like the average key level over there is like 20 and 21s, so I guess it's a fair spot. Okay, let's put it into A tier here, because
to be fair, Feral is being carried by a couple of top players that are consistently doing 22s right as of this recording. So that's probably why. Otherwise, without those people, if they started to play Boomkin or whatever, then it'll probably drop.
Yeah, it'll probably drop. But still, nice to see the
you can
cats.
do it. It's obvious.
Yes. Frost Death Knight. We've seen some 19s, we've seen some 20s. I don't know if up until this point there was any 21s cleared.
Not that we've seen.
Okay, so the first major concern is obviously the boss damage, like especially last week on Tyrannical, Frost kind of seemed to struggle a little bit. Like if you look at all of the other melees, it definitely looks like overall less DPS.
To be fair, this reset just came with Frost buffs, and I don't know how much players have been able to put those into action. We do have a couple of logs, and they seem to be doing really good numbers in their fortified keys. It's very likely that they haven't pushed their highest keys yet, because they're slightly seeming to do better than Assassination in certain dungeons, but we don't see this like across the board to kind of judge it put it ahead of Assassination, unfortunately.
Yeah, this is the thing, right? So because the buff just came out and we're looking at this very fresh, we don't have enough data to see like how the impact goes along. Okay, this may be wrong now because we don't have like sufficient data, or we're placing it into D tier based on everything we had up until this point.
I mean, there's always a chance that the buffs are not enough.
Yeah, that's also true, but again, they're still clearing 20, so obviously this doesn't mean Frost DK is a bad spec to play. Do you know
what did change though?
What?
99% of people are playing Obliteration now.
Oh, well, there you go, man. There you go.
There's like one really good.
I remember the people losing their mind in the comments, like, how can you say that? You have to play Breath all the time. Well, look at the logs.
You don't, not anymore. I mean, there's one log with a very high Breath play, but that's so hard to pull off that I think most people just gravitate towards Obliteration. The damage seems very close.
Okay. Now let's get to a proper star of the patch, the Fury Warrior. I mean, this was a surprise because when we checked out the data, looking at everything, like if you look at different rankings, like I don't know, from Rare.io or something, you don't see Fury Warrior being high up there, but it does clear 22s and 23s consistently. Actually, on the Rare.io, I've seen it being scored very close with other S tier specs ranked over there, and this is why. This is our first S tier spec.
Yes, it is actually doing really good, and I have a strong feeling, although we couldn't actually, inspect everybody doing their highest keys in terms of Fury, but I'm pretty sure that they have at least 2 set because the Fury tier set is really good.
Oh,
and from what I understand by, talking to X and Y here and there, it's definitely better than ARMS. I mean, we can clearly see from the overall performance, but Fury is just very consistent. Similar to Outlaw Enhanced, it just has kind of like no weaknesses.
This, again, the most performing specs are obviously clearing higher keys, and also their damage profile is really, really pumping. So that's what it is. Havoc Demon Hunter. Once again, we're looking at a spec that is clearly consistently an average of 20 plus 22 keys. There's like a couple of logs with 23 as well. I think there's also 24. A couple of top Havocs.
There's like 1 or 2 Havocs as of now that are doing 24s. Weirdly enough, that's actually really cool. I don't know if we've seen other specs doing that high, but the overwhelming Havocs don't clear, let's say, as high as Fury Warrior, for instance.
Yeah,
but that's a good indication that it's probably gonna pop off.
It's gonna get for sure. So we're putting this into S tier as well, because it's not that often you see data with 24 keys. Okay, this is just an indication that Havoc will probably reign supreme if they're not gonna get nerfed.
We're not saying that.
Can always happen. Can always happen. Okay, Red Paladins, again, no surprise, especially in the AoE department. Like, you have a lot of logs clearing 22s and 23s. Probably the biggest AoE burst that is currently available in the game, especially if now they have like their 4 set with Hammer of Wrath, just spreading the Judgment debuff on all of the targets, getting higher priority in the rotation. It was like even the 4 set overall didn't increase that much the value of the DPS, but surely it added up to whatever they already did in AoE.
I think the class is just really solid.
It's very strong. Plus, on top of like the cleared keys and the damage profile, Reds can actually now survive a lot more than other DPS. This due to the rework. So, okay, we're placing it into S tier.
Big boys.
They're there.
This is cool because I actually had a suspicion. I was kind of afraid of this, that once the season 2 starts, they're gonna drop off a little bit because they had their time in the sun. But I feel like this is still well deserved. I think it's a really good spec overall design.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's not as like quote unquote complicated as before. It's much more easier to get into and play. Obviously harder to master, but well deserved. They've never been S tier spec like ever, I believe. Okay, Sub Rogue on the other hand, who has been S tier in a lot of cases. Yeah, it carries on the flag. Okay, so we talked about, Assassination and Outlaw. Well, this is like the strongest competition within the class. Sub Rogue is pulling amazing numbers. Obviously, the uncapped AoE is helping a lot. Access to like really fast burst is helping also. You're looking at an average of 22s and 23s on top of the big ass damage. So where do you think Sub Rogue will rank up?
I mean, this is really funny because when you think about it, Sub has gotten a lot of flag. Like for people who just started playing, that's fine. You probably don't know. But when Mythic Plus was kind of like in its peak, usually around BFA, Sub was just dog awful.
Shit,
and it took like one bad expansion. It feels like ever since then, maybe you've had like one season where it was like A tier, but it's consistently at the top of
Sub Rogue was also shit in the first season of Shadowlands, but then after 9.1, I believe, then it started really creeping up, and it was good. So yeah, it has to be in front of the S tier. Like, this is like the most amount of logs and most consistent we've seen on the data everywhere. Like, even if you look at the other sites, you're definitely gonna see Sub Rogue highly ranked up there. Unholy Dead Knight, and Unholy Dead, I have to say, I don't know if it's because we're still in the 21 range or whatever. I don't know if it's like the nerf to the what's it called, the trinket,
puzzle,
the puzzle box.
Yeah, but they kind of buffed the spec in
yeah,
return,
I was
so.
expecting it to be at least an A-tier spec.
Yes, same here. Actually, I was a little bit surprised to see that Unholy has, you know, has average keys like 21s, 22s, like the 2020.
I mean, come on.
It's still big. I mean, it's saying that average. That's silly because like the highest we've done is like a 17 or whatever.
Yeah,
18.
this the average they do like for the highest level there, but it is like it's still like really good damage. I think
sure.
it excels mostly on boss fights. Surprisingly, I always felt like their kit always had like I would say a better optimization for cleaving and AoEing.
Yeah, I mean it does really good in AoE, and obviously we just started the 4 to 5 weeks, so we don't have the full extent of Unholy's power yet, but it probably sacrifices less single target than most other specs in the game, which I mean it's good, especially on tyrannical weeks, because you still have to take that boss down, and if you're not gonna take like a super meta S-tier spec, your Unholy is probably gonna save you a lot of time by, you know, doing a lot of boss damage too.
Yeah, but okay, in terms of like the performance overall, I think it's fair to put it into a B tier with survival over there. Probably will get further and further as we move towards the season. Last but not least, Windwalker Monks, who have been for a very long time the gods of AoE.
They're best friends of subs.
Yeah, well, that was like the perfect pair in terms of like melees, like sub and Windwalker. This is, I won't say not the case, but there's still like, okay, the average is like on 21s. We've seen some top bunks doing 23s.
Yeah.
So
it's like kind of close to SU. They're doing like SU levels keys, but that's like 1 or 2 players, and we cannot really judge like a whole spec based on 1 or 2 players. Yeah. So, but the, you know, the takeaway is that it's definitely possible, and it's not like they lost particularly anything. It could be that, you know, it's just the beginning of the gearing process. So things will definitely change next time we visit this. But for right now, it's doing pretty good. It's definitely A-tier with
definitely A-tier. I think we can put it in front of Outlaw and Feral. Listen, it does like obviously its main dish is still like one of the biggest AoE bursts it possibly can have, but also the single target damage is nothing to sneeze at. It's doing a lot better single target damage than perhaps in Arms Warriors or Frost DK or whatever.
Yeah.
So that damage profile with the huge AoE plus like decent single target plus being a monk, obviously, it puts it up there in the A-tier rankings. Now, obviously, we have to look a little bit at the other sources.
Because people, obviously, you guys will always come into the comments with, you know, but why is it C tier? I'm doing so much damage. That's fine. C tier is just because it's different than B and different than A. And if you really go into the details of it and check like all sorts of platforms, Warcraft logs, sub creation,
let's look at Warcraft logs. Let's look at Warcraft logs.
Warcraft logs was something that we usually take a look at more in depth for every tier list, but I couldn't help but notice that they've kind of put red kind of in the middle. Obviously, this is just, you know, they're also very close.
Well, look at it, yeah, they're like so close you cannot even make a difference between look at them. Is this like everybody's there?
Frost DK though is not that close.
Well, okay, Frost DK is maybe
but
the
you can
exception.
even look at the peaks, right? The peaks are very close for the people who are just pulling the most out of their specs. So it's a very good time to play pretty much anything right now.
Yeah, and if we pull up like the sub creation rankings, it's a very similar story. You see there like the Fury, the sub, the Havoc, right? You don't see the red necessarily over there, but it's kind of like, you know, getting close to it. Frost, on the other hand, is into a D tier, which
I mean, I can see Frost DK being similar to Assassination in terms of their overall performance as of now,
yeah,
but survival is, you know, biased or not, it is clearing a little bit higher than both of these two specs. So seeing it in D tier, maybe it's just because Subcreation is looking at the last couple of days, so maybe that's not enough data.
We're taking a lot more data into consideration. And lastly, on the UGG rankings, obviously something very similar to
what we have.
What we have, of course, I think they're kind of like looking at a lot more places to rank these, and it's kind of a more complete picture. So when we do these rankings, for the love of God, this is not us being biased or subjective. It's like we look at stuff like this and try to make a compilation decision.
Yeah, and then just because we don't put everything into S and A tier, because we might as well, right? If we're going to take everybody's opinion into considerations, like, oh, I do so much damage, I'm so good. Yes, pretty much all specs would probably be SA tier and maybe Frost DK and B tier in terms of the overall content that they clear, depending on how you judge it. So right now, it's still a good time to play anything. Obviously, some will always do a little bit better than others, and it's still, you know, it's the second week. Sure, not everybody has gone their force, so we might see bigger and bigger scores.
The rankings will change for sure in the future. What's most important, however, is you play what you love, and if you love something, regardless of the melee spec, and you
Take it
master
out to
it,
dinner.
yeah, you'll do amazing with it. Okay, that's the gist of it. Amazing as our Patreons. Once again, thank you guys for supporting the content. Check the link in the description, patreon.com/MarcelianOnline.
Appreciate it.
To like support all of the things that we do here and also get some goodies for you and yours. All right, Flame.
Well, thank you for watching the video, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye. Have a great weekend. Bye.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.